and I teach them one at a time as I introduce it, and I introduce a step. So when we do the mug project, the first thing I teach them to do is what to do with the wet clay, how to cut it off the block, how to take care of it, and I call that the law of air.
Is that when they cut it off the block? Now you have a machine that you do it with, right? But
No.
the clay that comes out of the box, can you work with it right away, or
Yeah.
is that you don't have to wedge it?
Well, I wedge it. That's where the law of air comes in, and I teach them the wedging. We slice a chunk off the block, and the law of air says that we have to keep our clay covered at all times. When we're working on it, but when we're not working on it, or if it's sitting to the side, it needs to be protected from the air, because the air is going to dry it up and make it bad.
Okay.
So keeping the clay covered, and you
Covered
can have
with plastic?
Yep. And you can have no air bubbles.
Right.
Accidental or intentional. And then I tell them about the fact that a block of clay, you don't know how that block of clay was made. Was it made with a machine that compresses the air out of it? Was it just piles of clay thrown onto each other and banged together? That'll have air pockets all the way through it.
Right.
And those little air bubbles will be a problem. So I teach them wedging that gets rid of the air, exercises the clay and gets it ready. Then we roll out the slab, then we wrap it around a cylinder, and it's time to attach, and I teach them the law of attachment. 3 steps: score, slip, weld. You can't do some, you can't do, one or the other. It's all and always in this order. Score is, and I teach them about clay shrink at this stage, where your clay, if you smash it together, it'll stick when it's wet, but as it dries, it shrinks into itself and it'll pull apart. So the score marks allow the clay to interlock so that when it shrinks, it pulls together. But our score marks are just little cuts, so sometimes the lines don't line up. And you're going to have all these little lines, and you're going to push it together. And then I kind of talk to them about, well, what happens, what's going to be in those little lines? They talk about, well, air. I'm like, okay, so you've made air bubbles, so now you're breaking this law. So we use slip. Slip is a liquid clay that's going to go into all those air pockets, fill it in, and when it dries, it hardens into solid clay, filling in the air pockets and preventing the air bubbles. And then the weld, blending it together.
So the weld is just where you
want to make that seam
Smooth
disappear. When you put 2 pieces of clay together, you should smooth it so it never looks like they were ever 2 separate pieces of clay. You have to make them one. You can go back in and carve an edge into it later so it looks like it was separate, but when you attach it, you want to make sure you blend it in so well it never looks like it was a separate part. And the last one I call the law of thickness, and this varies depending on your clay body. On our clay body, generally the 2 you've shown me, they have about the same consistency. I call it the rule of thumb. You use the diameter of your thumb. Anything that is thicker than the diameter of your thumb in all 3 directions.
Park!
No. We're like 15 minutes